All right, so we'll just get started. I'll start by introducing myself and Robin. So I'm Laura Cohen. I'm a career counselor at St. Mary's University in the Department of Career and Experiential Learning. We also have a co-facilitator here, Robin McIntosh, who is a arts and science academic advisor at St. Mary's. So she'll be taking all your questions that you can pop in the Q&A chat box. We'll be taking all those questions at the end, but feel free to message her directly if you have any questions or if you want to be anonymous for whatever reason. So before starting the panel, I'll just give an overview of the structure for today's event. So first I'll introduce each of the panelists with a short bio, and then we'll go right into asking them questions about their careers until about 4:45. And then if you have any questions, then we'll be doing that at about 4:45 until we'll wrap up at about 5:15. So this is being recorded. So for anybody who's missed the event, you can watch it later on our Career and Experiential Learning YouTube channel, which will pop up probably within the next week or so. So please make sure your audio is turned off. I believe that everybody's audio is turned off automatically because it's a webinar feature, but if you're not speaking, just try to be conscious of that, but it should be fine. So I'll start off with providing a land acknowledgement before we start. So St. Mary's University acknowledges it is on Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Mi'kmaq and Maliseet peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Maliseet titles and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. We'd also like to acknowledge that it is Black History Month, and SMU has an array of events happening to honor Black history. So I'm just going to share a link here if any of you want to get involved or learn more. So this is, maybe I'll have Robin do that actually, because I think I lost my little chat box, but it's smu.ca/blackstudent/events. And you can all check that out. So I'm going to dive in and introduce each panelist. So here we are, as you can see in the slide here. We'll just start with Isaac. So Isaac goes by he, him. He is a proud alumni of St. Mary's University, having graduated with a Bachelor of Science with honors in psychology in 2019. Throughout his undergraduate degree, he was involved in an array of research and extracurricular activities, which included founding the SMU Debate Society and receiving an honorable mention by the Canadian Psychological Association for his poster presentation at the 2019 North American Correctional and Criminal Justice Psychology Conference. Isaac currently works as a psychology technician in the Forensic Sexual Behavior Program at the Nova Scotia Health Authority, in addition to being a casual support worker with Regional Residential Services Society. Then we have Dane Adams. So Dane goes by he, him. He's a community outreach worker with the School Plus program through Halifax Regional Center for Education. Dane has an educational background that includes a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology with a cooperative education concentration from St. Mary's. He also received a Bachelor of Social Work through Dalhousie University. Dane has extensive work experience in both nonprofit and government agencies while practicing in the fields of mental health, disability, and the education system. And then we have Kartik. Kartik goes by he, him, is from Delhi, India, who graduated from St. Mary's University with a psych major. Kartik is deeply committed to helping others attain healthy bodies, minds, and spirits, advocating for inclusion around ethnicity, gender, religion, sexual orientation, and national origin. Currently working as a community trainee with a community-based research center for BIPOC 2SL LGBTQIA+ Atlantic Canada health leaders, Kartik likes to travel and enjoys food. Excuse me. For his holistic well-being, Kartik practices meditation and yoga. Then we have Elise. Elise goes by she, her. She grew up mostly in Nova Scotia and took her undergraduate degree at St. Mary's. She did a BA majoring in psychology and criminology. Since then, she's had the privilege of volunteering with Community Justice Society of Nova Scotia, sitting on the Cobequid Community Health Board and providing crisis intervention and patient advocacy with the Fredericton Sexual Assault Center. She's a single mom to 2 beautiful boys and currently works as an employment counselor for a nonprofit supporting people living with mental illness. And last but not least, we have Amanda George. She goes by she, her, has a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Carleton University in Ottawa and a Master's in Counseling and Spirituality from St. Paul University. She has worked in the mental health field for 30 years. As a psychometrist in the public and private sectors, she assesses the cognitive, academic, and socio-emotional functioning of children, youth, and adults. For the past 4 years, Amanda has had a private psychotherapy practice where she uses an integrative therapeutic approach in her work with adults. So thank you all for being here. Welcome, panelists. Let's start with an open question for all of you. So can you each tell us a little bit about your job, exactly what you do in your day-to-day life and what that looks like, and what's the most interesting part of your job, or your favorite part of your job? So we'll just start with Dane, then Elise, Amanda, Isaac, and then Kartik. Dane.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure and privilege to be here. My name is Dane Adams. I work as a community outreach worker with Schools Plus, which is a program that's a provincial program that's within the HRCE, or Halifax Regional Center for Education model. My typical day-to-day can look very different each day. It is a frontline job within the school system. So I personally work in 4 schools. So I work in 3 elementary schools and 1 junior high, supporting youth and families mainly, and particularly parent support. So again, we run a lot of different programs for parents around supporting their parenting journeys, as well as like connecting them to different services and navigating the school system. We like to call ourselves like the bridge between school and home and back again. So kind of just working with folks at their need and kind of trying to secure positive relationships and student success while at school. So I have a caseload of youth that I work with, ranging from ages and needs. So that could mean some supportive conversations here and there. It could be getting them connected with like recreation and different types of therapy outside of the organization, connecting with community partners. So like making sure that I know about all that's going on in the community and then kind of walking with folks through that piece. And then from there, kind of just being the #1 hype man or cheerleader in someone's life to try to make them feel empowered and to understand their own power as they move through life, and just kind of getting to watch people grow and see that. To answer the question too around my favorite part of my job, I guess I like the fact that I can go in between different communities and different schools and kind of get to know people firsthand. And I guess I get to relive a lot of my youth hanging with the teens, especially. So like a lot of the things that I would have done when I was younger, I'm like, oh yeah, I know, I've been there and I know that, and I can kind of give a little bit of that wisdom piece, which is super exciting. And then now that I'm a young single parent, I can empathize with the parents that I'm working with as well. So being able to kind of relate to people and give a little bit of what I've done that may not have gone the greatest, to kind of navigate people to their best situations and solutions to be successful.
Thank you, Dane. Elise, did you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi.
Hi.
So I work for a nonprofit organization called Lake City Works. Some of you may know them from Lake City Woodworkers and the shop that we have downstairs. So I work specifically in the employment services and client care. And so my day-to-day changes quite a bit. I have on-site clients as well as community clients, where I work with a demographic of people living with mental illness. It's not very, it's not like the typical employment counseling where you're working specifically just on employment goals and building resumes or cover letters. A lot of it is crisis intervention and working with them through their day-to-day challenges. So it's very exciting in that way. I'm very privileged to have this opportunity to get to work with such a wide demographic as well. So we work with people from various backgrounds and ages and stages, which is really cool. Also a lot of our clients have intellectual disabilities. So that's a new piece for me, which is really exciting, getting to learn and work with them. And I guess the most exciting part of my job, or what I love the most, is the resiliency that I see in my clients. I learn so much from them, and so much from the struggles that they deal with being a marginalized group, especially when it comes to the challenges that we have here in Halifax right now with housing. That's definitely at the forefront of issues that people living with mental illness face.
I'm muted. Thank you, Elise. Yeah, Amanda, did you want to go ahead now?
Yeah, sure. Hi,
you.
everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. So I have two jobs actually, so a psychometrist and also a psychotherapist. So as a psychometrist, I see a typical day would be doing an assessment. Assessments are usually in 3-hour blocks of time where I give a variety of tests. So looking at cognitive functioning, academic functioning, executive functioning. I work with both neuropsychologists and just registered psychologists. So they're both neuropsychological and psychoeducational assessments that I do. So 3-hour block of time, and then we take a break in there, of course, or a couple, depending on the age of the child. And then an assessment usually takes about 2 to 4 sessions to complete. And then there's all the scoring and behavioral observations that go along with that. And then as a therapist, I see adults primarily for things like anxiety, depression, grief and loss. Certainly a lot of issues with respect to racial identity that I'm now working with. And those are typical 50-minute sessions, your standard psychotherapy hour. And that involves also a lot of paperwork after, but yeah, so that's what I do. And what I love about my job, what I find most interesting, is just the people that I get to work with, those interactions. Is someone, you know, I may see 2 children and the referral question is ADHD, but they will present so differently, and just learning about the nuances, what makes them so unique, that's what I really enjoy about my job.
Great, thank you, Amanda. Isaac?
Hi there, everyone, and it's just want to say it's lovely to be alongside all these other amazing panelists and kind of to get a chance to hear a bit about what they do. So as Laura would have mentioned, I work as a psychology technician for the Nova Scotia Health Authority. I also have a second job like Amanda, so I also work as a casual support worker for Regional Residential Services Society. So most of my work day to day is at the Health Authority, so I work as a technician and I work as a casual support worker on the side. I'll describe a little bit about both of those, but I do wish to just provide 2 disclaimers, which is probably really important. First one, any kind of just, you know, answers that I might describe in my, about my work today represent myself. So I don't represent the Health Authority right now or the Regional Residential Services Society. I'm an independent right now. So anything you hear, don't go, oh, I'm going to send an angry letter, or, you know, just that kind of, it's a good disclosure. The second thing I do wish to state, yeah, thanks, Dave. The second thing I do wish to state as well is that working at so as a psychology technician, I work in the forensic sexual behavior program. So day to day, I work with clientele, men who have committed sexual offenses in the community. So in my answers today, I want to be as respectful as possible to everyone's lived experiences. I completely appreciate that some of this material is difficult for many. I'm not going to go into details. I'm going to keep confidentiality, obviously, but I'm also going to not overburden any kind of detail. But I do think it's appropriate for me to provide that kind of brief disclaimer just so everyone is aware of the work, and the things I talk about will reflect that, but I'll try to be as understanding and as respectful as possible with that. I hope everyone's okay with that. So finally, now to answer the question. So as a psychology technician, my day-to-day consists of working, as I said, with men who've committed sexual offenses. The day kind of looks different depending on what I'm doing, like many of you. Most of my time I'm doing research, so nothing too exciting. I would differ. I find it quite exciting, but So most of what I do is I work with our database. So we have a database of all of our clients who have been through the clinic over the past 10, 15 years. So I work with SPSS and I do kind of a lot of that coding. The database is really important for kind of looking at a lot of predictors for a lot of our clients and things like that. So how many, once they leave our program, will they go on to commit other offenses, things like that. So there's a lot of research components involved in what I do. I do a lot of literature reviews, things like that. Besides that, my main part of my job is I do clinical assessments. So I mainly specialize in an assessment called the PPG. It's called the penile plethysmograph. Some of you may have heard of it. Again, I'm not going to go into tremendous detail, but it's basically an assessment that measures sexual arousal to different stimuli, so of individuals of different ages and in different genders. And so we use that as a part of our comprehensive assessment with our clients who come through. So it's a key part of the kind of assessment process. So many of our clientele, they have been individuals who've committed offenses, have been convicted. Some have gone to prison. And so they are seen as a part of our probation order. So we do a full psychological assessment. So I work very closely with clinical psychologists, do a very kind of holistic psychological assessment that contains personality testing, actuarial assessment, and the PPG. And so following that, clients are often are often referred to treatment. And so I also sometimes assist clinicians in the actual treatment of the individual. So typical CBT kind of approach. So that's kind of the mainly day-to-day. The assessments sometimes take about the morning or the afternoon. I do about 2 or 3 of them a week. And the rest of the time I am working as a researcher. So I think that's kind of a long answer.
Thank you, Isaac. Yeah, very interesting as well. I'm sure you'll all have questions at the end about what you do in more detail, but thank you very much for that. Kartik, can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day and what your favorite part of your job is?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Kartik Saini. I use he, him pronouns. For me, I think when I'm gonna talk or share my experience, that will be more towards coming as an international student, and most of the folks are looking for job opportunities that will help with their permanent residence. So currently, I'm working as a community trainee with Community-Based Research Center, where I overlook 2 projects named like 2S LGBTQIA BIPOC Atlantic Health Leaders, where it's a closed group only focused to BIPOC individuals to give them support and have this conversation, because we have realized that there need to be that, a voice to be heard and share the experience. So one of the group is that, and the another one is 2 Cute Things, where it's just a general group who identify again with 2S LGBTQI plus Health Leader Atlantic Canada. If you want to join those groups, you can always email them. Oh, sorry, was I muted?
Yeah, but you're good now.
Oh, sorry.
It was just for 2 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's that. Besides that, I also am board of director for Halifax Pride. I overlook co-lead 2 groups or committees, which is again health and mindfulness, and also immigrant committee. So yeah, if you have questions about permanent residency but to look when you're, what kind of jobs that you should look, you can always reach out to me. What I like most about my job is to meet different people, get networking, because it's really important in today's time that, it's important to have those networks and reach out to people, not just for resources, but just also to create that community and inclusion. So that's me.
Kartik, thank you very much. Yeah, community is obviously very important right now, for sure. Thanks everybody for that. So this next question is for Isaac and Elise. So what advice would you have for someone still in their undergrad right now doing psychology? So Isaac, like how does one get their foot in the door? Let's say if they were interested in forensic psychology or doing research, and Elise, how would one get like an entry-level work position in employment counseling in your field?
Should I go first or
Sure,
should
go ahead.
Elise?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I guess the best way to answer the question is kind of describe a little bit about how I got my foot in the door. So with a lot of forensic work that you'll see, so I work alongside a lot of clinical psychologists. So the clinic I work at really adheres to that Boulder model. So we're scientist practitioners. So the science underlays everything that we do, especially considering the importance of the work, right? So with that being said, the way that I got my foot in the door was through research. So my advice to anyone would be to, talk to professors. I literally just reached out to my honors thesis advisor when I was in my second or third year. I took a class, there was content that I was interested in, and I went after hours. Office hours are very underrated, by the way. Once you kind of get your foot in the door, you build that kind of personal rapport, and you'd be surprised the opportunities that can open up. In this field, it's very hard to find a good fit. So you need to, volunteers, people, as I said, it can be difficult subject matter. So you need a certain maturity. And when you go to talk to professors, if you feel like that's something that you want to pursue, they'll be able to see that maturity, be able to see that you'd be a good fit. So it doesn't take long for you to be offered volunteering opportunities. And those are the way that you really get your foot in the door. So I volunteered with the Health Authority on a project in 2017. It was an amazing community outreach project on pornography use. And after that, they needed someone to fill in a role, and they thought of me. So networking, getting your foot in the door, but really just not being afraid to talk to professors and not being afraid to do undergraduate research. So once you talk to professors, they can help you out and usually bring you into their lab. So that's what I would recommend for people looking to get their foot in the door.
Awesome. Thank you, Isaac. Yeah, I mean, that's very similar to what, as a career counselor, what I would tell students. So there you go. There's some golden nuggets for anyone who wants to get into research or forensic psychology. So Elise, how about you? What do you think?
So I actually started out pretty similar to Isaac. I was pretty involved in my undergrad at St. Mary's, and I got to know my professors pretty well, and I did some research while I was there as well. I think that is definitely the stepping stones that you should take if you can, and asking questions. I might be a little biased because I was an academic advisor, but starting there is a really good place. Talking with them and maybe getting a bit of an understanding of the steps it takes to do honors if that's the route you're taking. When it comes to volunteer work, that I have to say is a major reason why I've gotten the jobs I've had. I just out of life reasons, I moved to a new province, and I had a child pretty quick after I graduated from St. Mary's. So that kind of took me in a little bit of a side road, but I found a job working in academic advising, actually. And that's kind of where it started. I knew that I wanted to work with people and in psychology and become a counselor someday. So that was a really good start for me. And I'm not going to say it's easy to get an entry level at a university. It's not. I think it was because of a lot of the experiences I had previously with volunteer work that I was fortunate enough to have the positions that I had. And when I finished my job at St. Mary's University here a couple of years back, this position with employment counseling was like the next step for me. I knew that from my experience doing academic advising that I wanted to help people with the next step, finding work, and working with people with mental illness. Like I couldn't ask for a better opportunity, honestly. But yeah, get your foot out there, talk to your professors, use your academic advisors, go to the employment center. These are all free and very accessible resources, which you will not have as much ease once you've left. I think that's key. Just ask the questions, and yeah, talk to your profs.
Yeah, thanks, Elise. Yeah, a little plug for my department, Career Services. You all have free career counseling and job search strategy help within our department. I'll do a little plug with details at the end, but yeah, thank you for sharing your sort of career story there, Elise. And volunteering is big too, right? In this field, no matter really what direction, volunteering is highly valued. Amanda, I wanted to kind of go off to you. So how does one get in the sort of similar to this question that I was asking them, how does one get their foot in the door if they're interested in working as a psychometrist, if they're interested in exploring that, or as a therapist? What advice would you have?
Yeah, I think the advice that Isaac and Elise gave is really important. Certainly, speaking with your profs, it's actually how I got into the role as a psychometrist. When I graduated, my goal had been just to get a job in psychology, whatever it was. And I actually was speaking with a psychologist who had been my professor, and he asked me what I was doing, and I told him about all the hundreds of applications I'd sent out with no bites. And he told me that he knew someone who needed a psychometrist and that they were willing to train me. And I had no idea at that time exactly what a psychometrist was. So I said, yeah, I'll take it. So to become a psychometrist, definitely it helps to, the coursework I think is really important. So courses in human development, in human neuropsychology, statistics, research, test development, psychological measurement. I noticed that some of those courses are taught at St. Mary's. I did find there is a post-BA course being taught in Edmonton at one of the universities, specifically to become a psychometrist. So those opportunities are there. And yeah, I think previous experience working with people in some type of assessment fashion, whether it's you were a volunteer and you were, interviewing people or doing questionnaires with them, something along those lines would also be really helpful as well.
Thank you. And to be a psychometrist, a lot of people don't know this, but you don't necessarily need a graduate degree, correct?
No, you don't.
Right.
The minimum is a BA.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay. And then for all panelists, hear this question. Maybe we can start with Dane. How do you prevent burnout when working in mental health? So all of you work in mental health in some capacity. How do you continue to enjoy the work that you do and being an effective professional but avoid burnout?
Such a good question, and I think that there's a lot to it, and I think that it also relates to burnout in general. Like now that people are most folks right now are students that are listening to this, so it's like burnout is super real, and it can affect you in so many different ways, and sometimes even affect you in ways that you don't even realize it affects you in. I think the biggest thing is learning about who you are as a person and being honest with that. I think that we have I think that we're getting better in society about talking about things related to burnout and talking about, using the terms and all that kind of stuff. But I also feel like we also kind of put it in a bubble of okay, in order to do self-care, this is what you're supposed to do, or these are the things that you need to do to kind of keep yourself healthy. I think that learning about what really, who you are and what really works for you. So again, for me, I'm a sports guy. So me going outside and shooting hoops is just as effective for me as sometimes deep breathing, because that's just what I do. For some folks, deep breathing is the key, and that works so amazing and has so many benefits to your health. You do those things as well, but just really learning about what it is that you like to do that relaxes you, brings you joy, whether that be an activity, whether that be being mindless for a little bit and doing nothing, whether you have a spouse or not that may, drive you insane and about going on a video game for a little bit. But again, maybe that's what you need to kind of get you to the next stage at some point. Yeah, just doing what brings you joy and keeps you kind of grounded would be my advice on burnout.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's so different for everybody. Like you said, everybody has their own deep breathing or or whatever that may be, that brings them back to their center and helps them feel grounded. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. How about you, Kartik?
Thank you, Dane, for sharing your self-care. I think I relate similarly to with you because I have worked as a residential counselor in 2019 up until 2020, and I've worked with people with mental health. They come from East Coast Forensic Hospital, and sometimes it can be really hard. But again, knowing yourself, knowing your boundaries, and just it's a process, because at times we see, okay, the other person is doing that, like that's my self-care, but you got to know yourself, you got to know your boundaries. And I personally practice meditation and yoga that really helps me. Like breathing, it's really beautiful. We do it every day, but just being mindful to yourself and what your boundaries are, that's really important. And also communicate. If you're feeling low, communicate to your supervisor, communicate to your coworkers, because they are your allies or your family members or friends, because at times it's hard to be vulnerable, but being vulnerable is the key. So I think it's important to have that support circle with yourself.
Thank you, Kartik. Does anybody else want to jump in on that question?
Yeah, if I could.
Sure, go ahead.
I really appreciate what the two of you have said. It really resonates. I think, when it comes to burnout, what strikes me as something that's really important is being able to recognize it and not to ignore it. There's so many times when people will just, let me just push through this and get to the end and everything will be fine. And I think there really is that need to just take a step back and just recognize, what you're going through, and to acknowledge it and not put it aside, and then to address it in some way. And as both Dane and Kartik have said, that the way you address it is individual for sure. It is the support system that you have around you. It is the connections that you make with people, that you keep open with people so that they know that you're there. It's also being really compassionate with yourself, that you are allowed to maybe not be having a good day, that things are maybe getting a little bit too much to handle, and just recognizing that that is okay. So.
Thank you, Amanda. Actually, my next question is for Amanda again. So what was to be a psychometrist, was it always your plan? I think you had answered that actually before. So you said that it wasn't really, it was a bit of a non-linear path, eh?
It was definitely non-linear. It was just getting into psychology. But yeah, I was actually, so Isaac, I was actually an admin assistant in the forensic unit at the Royal Ottawa Hospital here in Ottawa, when I bumped into my psychologist friend who said that I should try this job. So yes, it was not, yeah.
What do you find most challenging about either of your positions that you have?
Oh, wow. Good question. So with the psychometry work that I do, sometimes it is just getting past people's defenses. And that's also true for therapy. Sometimes with children, it can be behavior, and it's working through that, because the behavior is there for a reason. It's not that they're trying to be difficult. This is the way that they know how to respond. This is how they know to get a reaction. And so it really is understanding that. And it took me a while to get comfortable with that and to be able to work with it and appreciate it for what it was, that I'm working with children and not little adults. Because my first job in psychometry was working with the other end of the spectrum. I worked with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease clients. So I went from that to testing children. So it was quite the experience, very different. So yes, I think the behavior, even with adults, motivation, when they know that they're being tested. Motivation can be an issue, particularly with teens, I find. So just kind of working with them to better understand, you know, why they're here, what they're hoping to get out of it, what they're afraid of. Because, you know, if they've come for testing, there's usually something that is impeding their progress, and all they see is that they're not getting ahead and they're stuck. And so really, really addressing that with people. And in therapy, kind of the same thing, just working with people's defenses can be challenging.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Amanda. How did your psych degrees prepare you for the workforce, all of you? So we could start with Isaac. If it did, how did it prepare you?
I like to think my psych degree did prepare me. If it didn't, then that's money that I'll never get back. What I will say is that it gives you the knowledge and the kind of the bits of nuggets of and useful stuff that you'll really expand upon in the practical work. There really is a difference between reading about mental health and reading about people's experiences and working with individuals. I absolutely understood and kind of resonated with what Amanda was saying about the nuances. It's no textbook will ever prepare you for working with people. So how my degree helped me, though, is it gave me the confidence to feel competent in what I do. So, I often look back at class notes. I often even talk to my mentor and other people. So I found that building those connections, networking, and, just trying to remember the content that I learned from class, often sometimes at 8:30 in the morning when you're tired. Just, not having too many high expectations that you're going to remember everything, but just trying to take what resonates with you the most. There were classes that I loved, that I really got things out of. There were professors that I adored and I developed professional relationships with. So knowing what works for you, being honest with yourself about that, and soon you'll find that your degree will work for you. You just have to find the right path in that degree.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else want to jump in terms of how their degree prepared them?
I like to always put my plug in around co-op, because that was one of the things that helped me a lot too, was the ability to have the opportunity to experience stuff while you're still learning. So you learn about what you do like, and then you learn about what you don't like. And so I had the ability and the privilege to do 3 different placements in spots that there were some that I was like, oh man, this is like my passion's here. I feel really great. And kind of similar to Amanda, my path to social work was very, very all over the place, discombobulated. I thought I was going to go in and be a therapist, which I'm still working towards. But I also learned a lot about myself and like the passion that I had for understanding all the different pieces of someone's life that impact them and may, draw them to wanting to, reach out for services and things of that nature, right? So, but I learned that I love that piece by doing my placements. And then I was in another placement where I was like, it'd be lovely to work at a hospital, and there's no knock of that to folks that are. But again, for me, I learned, okay, that wasn't maybe where I wanted to be. I kind of wanted to be more in community, or I kind of wanted to be more with people on front line, or doing more of that in-person work. As opposed to the other. But I learned that through the trial and error, and I had the ability and the privilege to kind of try that and see how that felt, and then go, okay, let me go this route instead. So I guess trying opportunities, if you're in a position where you're able to volunteer, yes, that's great. But also, again, like I was someone that came and grew up from, a single parent household, didn't have a lot of money, things of that nature. I couldn't afford really to volunteer my time. Anytime that I had free, I needed to make money in order to kind of, make ends meet. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to try this job. Shout out to Isaac for working with RRSS. I also worked there behind the scenes too. So again, like just trying different things and getting a niche for what makes how you want to practice and what makes you who you are, and get you up where you're feeling like you're going to work and you're not really working. You're doing what you like to do, right? That would be my little nugget there.
Thank you. Yeah, so out of the classroom experience is invaluable. We offer co-op at St. Mary's University, so thanks for that plug there. And yeah, volunteering, once again, that can't be emphasized more, I think, by any of the panelists here. So thank you, Dane. I'm just going to jump into the last question, actually, because we're running out of time, and then we'll go into the Q&A because there's a whole list of them. So, so if you could all go back to your undergraduate days and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be? So whoever wants to jump in there.
I will jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
I think the one piece of advice I would give myself is to learn and be mindful, like learn mindfulness. And I know we hear that word all the time. I don't think oftentimes we understand what that really means. But exercising mindfulness in your whatever you're doing, and learning about self-care at that point, because it's your first major experience leaving home, and starting to do adult-like things and making decisions for yourself. And it's a great opportunity you're going to experience struggles. And it's a great time to reflect on yourself and maybe some past issues that you've had, and just recognize and give yourself some grace for that it's not easy. It can be a big struggle. Unfortunately, I experienced a major mental breakdown in my undergrad, and that really got me to think more about my mental health and think about self-care. And if you can practice that now, it will help you not only through your undergrad, but it'll help you when you're practicing in whatever avenue you choose to take your degree. Because if you can be whole yourself and also give yourself grace for when you're not, and that it's okay not to be okay, that's a major life lesson. Just take that time and be mindful of that. I think will take you through that life lesson. Will just take you through your whole being and your whole experience in employment and in personal life as well.
Yeah, that's so great. I'm glad you mentioned that. Like anyone going into this field, if you want to be a helping professional or be a therapist, doing your own work on yourself is like incredibly important. And there's free counseling at St. Mary's University for all students. So that's really wise advice, I think. Just being mindful, as you said, and self-aware. Does anybody else want to jump in there and provide any advice to your former self?
I think Elise spoke super powerfully and very impactful, and I can relate to where she's coming from in terms of like that piece around learning who you are, and that self-care piece is super important. And I think that just like really truly enjoying the experience of going through school. So like really enjoying taking in and networking in those moments, but also being super kind to yourself and trying things that you're able to try while you can, and recognizing and kind of like, I think for me, like I went in with a plan. So some people will go in with no plan. Some people go in with like a super rigid plan. Some people go in with like I don't even know why I'm here, but I'm here plan. And I think that the middle one is kind of the way to be in terms of just like allowing yourself to understand that you're going to be exposed to so many different things through this walk and through this journey. It's super okay to kind of just take a little bit of everything and try a little bit of everything like a buffet and just marinate in that and allow that to be the thing that guides your decision making. And recognizing that bumps in the road are going to happen, but they also are learning experiences and really benefit you once you get through and become resilient, because then you can relate more to the clients that you end up working with. So again, if you have no experiences going through, or you feel like, well, I have no experience, doing this job or doing this, your life experience really and who you are as a person is the thing that's going to guide how you practice. And then you take on whatever job that you actually pick as being the thing that you practice, and you're bringing you to that. And that's the part of the job. Who you are and how you practice is going to make, no matter where you work, the most amazing, impactful thing for other people, as well as yourself, because you're going to learn with the people that you work with too. So yeah, I really appreciate what Elise said, because I think that it's super important to learn about who you are and to recognize and celebrate that resilience that you have when you get over these hurdles, and use that in your practice to kind of benefit those that may be coming behind you with the same types of deal.
Well said. Yeah, well said. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, the idea of a buffet, I like that metaphor, and not being afraid of having a non-linear career path. I think a lot of people think that they should go from here to here to here and then that's it. But most people don't have that kind of career, right? Most people just go all around and then eventually stumble upon what they want to do. So thank you for that. I don't want to cut anybody off. I'm sure you all have some really interesting pearls of wisdom to share with that question, but we'll just jump into the Q&A. And if we do have extra time, maybe we could pop back to that. But maybe I'll let Robin take it away and sort of facilitate the Q&A there. We have about 15 or 16 questions. So.
Great, thank you, Laura, and thank you everyone. Those have been wonderful answers, and hello to all of our students. I recognize a lot of names from talking to you over the last number of years. So the questions have come through, they're wonderful. Some of them are going to be directed to specific panelists, and some of them I may direct just based on some of the information that you've given us already tonight. So I'm going to start with one, and Laura, you might even want to jump in on this one, which is, what is the best place to volunteer your service if you're majoring in sociology and psychology? So Laura, I know that career services can help you with that. So if you want to jump in, and then I might actually give that one to Kartik, because I know you've done a lot of volunteer work as well.
Yeah, so one of the places that I direct students to for volunteering is volunteerns.ca. I just put it in the chat box. It's a fantastic directory, and you can find volunteer experiences based on your interest or demographic that you want to work with. So it's pretty up to date in terms of who's looking. And with COVID, there's a lot of things shutting down and opening up. So that's a great place to start. And if you want to explore that a little bit more, you can always book an appointment with myself, a career counselor, and we can explore that a little bit more in detail and specifics. So.
Great, thank you. So Kartik, could you give us a little maybe advice on how you got into some of the volunteering work that you've done?
Absolutely. Again, thank you for Career Services, who always help me to find volunteer opportunities. But at the same time, there are a lot of volunteer opportunities are already there on campus. So there are career fairs and volunteer fairs happening throughout the year. I mean, twice a year, fall as well as in winter. So go there. Find the opportunities that you feel interested in, because I have volunteered a lot throughout the university, and it is also accredited through your CCR. So that's again a great opportunity to build your resume. There's inactive at SMU. There are opportunities with residents, RSO. Sometimes you also get paid. And while getting that volunteer experience, I applied to work with Career Services, and I got the job. So yeah, definitely. And outside, there's Nova Scotia Health. Now it's called Nova Scotia Health. There are Autism Nova Scotia. So yes, but if you go to the not CCR, but Career Services page, you'll find lots of options.
Great, thank you so much. Now, this next question has kind of come up just with some of the information that you've chatted about. But one question was, do you all need a master's degree to do the work that you're doing? And I know some of you may have a master's degree, some of you may not. Some of you may have a second undergraduate degree, some of you may not. So what I would put out would be just a really quick answer. Do you need a graduate degree for the work that you're doing? And then maybe let me know what background you do have if you did go beyond your bachelor's degree in psychology. So I'm going to start with Isaac.
I don't have a master's degree. I don't require one for my work, having a BSc. That being, or BA, honestly. The BSc just allowed me to have more potential for research or whatnot. That was another question I saw, BA or BSc. That really kind of depends. Honestly, a BA does you fine. It's more the actual connections you do and the research that you do. That graduate experience, everything else is just kind of, but yeah, I don't need a master's. Doesn't hurt to have a master's. For continuing work though, if I wanted to go on to do more clinical or anything like that, I would need some sort of PhD or master's degree. So there are entry-level positions with BSc or BA, but master's never hurts.
Okay. And Amanda.
There we go. Sorry about that. For a psychometrist position, it's generally you just need a minimum of a BA. counseling position, and I should point out that I am in Ottawa, in Ontario, and I think the requirements might be different for psychotherapists in Nova Scotia, but I'm not entirely sure. So to be a psychotherapist in Ontario, yes, you do require a master's degree.
I'll just jump in quickly. In Nova Scotia, it's a regulated province, so you do need the master's to be a counseling therapist here, so it's similar.
It's similar.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura. And Dane, you're going to be next, but I'm going to add a secondary question on for that one because this one came up, which was, do you need a Bachelor of Social Work to work with Schools Plus?
No. So yeah, quick answer is no. To backpedal off of what Amanda said, yeah, I'm in the process of getting my master's right now, or I'm applying for my master's. Fingers crossed I get it. I hope so. To do a little bit more of that therapy piece. That's the thing that you would need like a BSW for to move up in HRCE to kind of provide more opportunities at like psychotherapy or things of that nature. But no, you do not need a BSW or a master's degree to do work in Schools Plus. A lot of folks that are in the same position as me have BAs. Some people were grandfathered in from previous experience, like in HRCE. So some folks that were EPAs for a long time, some folks that have worked in different other disciplines in community work. So yeah, you don't need a BSW. It wouldn't hurt because the work is very similar to social work and a lot of like the case management stuff, but realistically, no, you do not.
Great, thank you so much. And Elise?
So the position I have right now, no. You don't need a master's. However, here in Nova Scotia, a lot of employment services do have a career practitioner certification, and your chances of getting a job being an employment counselor are much better if you do have that here in Nova Scotia, especially if you want to work for Nova Scotia Works. I think that might even be one of their main criteria, or that you're working towards that. For what I want to do in counseling, yes, I have to get a master's, but the avenue to which you take your master's or which master's you take, there's quite a variety actually that you can take.
Great, thank you so much. And Kartik?
So like I was telling earlier, that I also work as a residential counselor. Again, you don't need masters, just bachelors of arts, major in psychology or sociology will work. But I would also like to say that SMUSA also like do this trainings where it's like mental health first aid training or NVCI. These are two trainings that are really like employers are looking. Even if you don't have, they usually provide you, but it's just nice to have it on your resume as an experience and as also your toolkit.
Great, thank you so much. Amanda, I have a few questions specific for some of the work that you do. One of them is, what schooling and experience was required for you to get into psychotherapy?
Oh, sorry, did you say what schooling and experience?
Yeah, what schooling and experience was required for you to get into psychotherapy? And then the second part would be, do you typically work with children in that field?
Oh, okay. Well, I can answer the second part of that question first. In psychotherapy, I only work with adults. As a psychometrist, I work with kids and adults. So in terms of schooling, I did require a BA in order to get into the MA program. And they essentially looked at what my work experience was like, particularly with the school that I went to, the university I went to. So experience that I had, work experience, but also what other experience I had outside of that. So things like volunteering would come into play. I was also president of a nonprofit organization for 10 years. And that was really geared toward helping a specific community group. So that was also really important to them as well.
Great. I'm going to keep on you for a minute because I've got a couple more here for you.
Okay.
Would you rather counsel or test if the pay and time was the same? So would you rather test your clients or would you rather counsel your clients?
Wow, that's a great question. And I don't know if I have an answer. You know, I initially just did testing and then slowly increased the counseling. And now I'm doing probably 60-40, so more counseling, 40% testing. And I think for me, that's a good mix. Now, certainly as a counselor, I get paid more than being someone who does assessments. It's hard to imagine a time where they both be equal for pay and time. So I guess I like a little bit of both. I'm going to keep it that way. I do like to do both of them, and it's just finding the right mix for me.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay.
And the next question is going to be for Isaac. Isaac, as a community worker, do you go into the homes and provide support to families, or is the support usually provided through an organization?
So in my case with RRSS, and I'm sure Dane could speak to this as well. So you work in the homes. So they're usually not small option housing is what I do. So I work at one specific home. In that home, I come into the home. The clients, they live there. We try to provide them as much quality as service as life as they can. So it's a very less of a hospital clinical environment. It's more, this is your homes, you're a guest, you're coming in and you support them in their daily tasks to make sure they can have the most fulfilling lives as possible. So you help them cook their food, you help them bathe or, take care of personal things like that. You help them with recreational activities. But that's kind of how I work. So it's more you go into their home and you're helping to assist them to live their lives to the fullest. You're supplementary.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This next question I'm going to put out to Dane. What recommendations do you have for a student graduating this spring searching for a job? Do you have any tips to help them with their job hunt?
Yeah, we're in a very different time now. So I feel like the tips that I would have had before the COVID would be different than now. But I do think that people have already touched on it in this panel. It's all about who you know. It's all about your networking and your connectiveness to others. So again, like chatting with your profs, making relationships with those folks, and really having conversations around like, oh, is there anything or anybody that you're connected with, or any projects that you're in that I can get in on as well? And then from there, kind of going through that piece. Websites like Indeed and Career Beacon and those things are available to folks online that they can kind of look up different things. But again, like just getting involved in like organizations either that you're volunteering with, and then kind of just putting your best foot forward and kind of putting yourself out there to see if there's any opportunities to move up. Again, I think that networking is the number one thing, and anytime that you're anywhere and you're putting your best foot forward, you're kind of like showcasing who you are, and folks are going to pick up on that, and they're going to be like, okay, like if we ever have an opportunity, I'm gonna ask that person because they're giving me that piece. Not necessarily always in like a professional aspect, but even just in general, like when you're going into places and you occupy space anywhere, you never know what kind of opportunities are going to come your way. And so I guess you're always kind of networking yourself and your character everywhere you go. So I think that, yeah, just kind of being around and making relationships with people that could put you in a position is always great.
Great, thank you. This next question is for Elise. What path did you take to be an employment counselor, and how long did it take? Was there any kind of specific training that you had to go through, or licensing or certification?
So the path I took, I started out doing academic advising, and I applied to the organization that I work for right now. And what they looked for had a lot to do with specific skills, not necessarily specific jobs that I had prior. So because of my volunteer work, I had a lot of certifications. I see here someone wrote about nonviolent crisis intervention, suicide intervention, mental health first aid. I had a lot of those things already, and I had experience working with people in crisis situations and a very good understanding of mental illness and the oppression and, I guess, intersectional issues that people living with mental illness have. So that, I think it had more to do with the skills that I have than it did to do with the jobs that I've had prior. One thing I mentioned earlier is here in Nova Scotia, if you wanted to be an employment counselor elsewhere, typically you need to have a career development practitioner's certification. That's something that I'm working on right now. It's not mandatory for the position I have, but it's something that we're all working towards so that we can better support our clients and have that certification to back us.
Great, thank you. Now this next question can be really for anyone who may work one-on-one in more of a therapist counselor role, but it's how do you deal with experiential limitations and challenges as a therapist? For example, when you're trying to help a client whose experiences are completely untested waters for you, or if they're from a different ethnic background and their experiences mean differently than it would resonate with yourself if you were in the same situation. Do you get specific training to overcome those barriers during your university education, such as cultural differences? I'll put it out to Dr. George first, just because I do know that you work one-on-one with a lot of adults, and then if anyone else wants to jump in as well.
So thanks, Robin. I just want to clarify, I'm not a doctor. So in the program that I did at St. Paul University in Ottawa, yes, we did do some work in multicultural counseling. So it was part of a larger course that I took, and one section of it was actually looking at multicultural counseling. I find in my practice, so I guess the question relates to if there is someone of a different cultural or racial identity, how do I go about determining, if I'm able to work with them? And that's a conversation that I have with myself first, and then one that I have with the client, because they also need to be able to trust that I'm able to help them in some way. If it is something that is outside my area of expertise, I need to be able to recognize that, acknowledge it to myself, and acknowledge it to the client. And then what I would typically do is then I give recommendations to the client. So if there is a mental health issue that they are experiencing that I don't have experience with, or I just don't have enough training in, then I will certainly recommend therapists who may have that training. Also, if it is a culture or gender identity that I don't feel qualified to speak about or to work with, I will do the same. I will do my best to assist them in finding someone who will be able to help.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to put this one out to Isaac. Can a person with a degree with a major in psychology or sociology work in human services, community services, or as a support worker?
Yes, for sure. So I find the degree, background of a lot of people that I work with in RSS can kind of differ. Some actually have, BSWs. Some have that kind of experience. Others have just undergraduate experience. Some even have NSCC. So community college experience. There's a wide variety of kind of those qualifications. So that's the good news for someone who's looking to work in that kind of work. So any kind of community support position, what it doesn't really matter what it is. For me, I work with individuals with intellectual disabilities, but depending on the organization, it might differ on clientele. So they're looking more to see if you can have those kind of base competencies, the ability to learn, to kind of work well with people and to see that you're able to draw those lines really well. It's kind of vague as that sounds. Like when it's working with clients, you don't want to support too much. You don't want to support too little. You want to provide them the independence they need to live the fullest lives. You don't want to do things for them and even limit them in those opportunities. So being respectful, treating them as people, things like that, like as kind of vague as that sounds, those are the things that you want to have going into that. Background experience can vary as long as you can show that you have those things.
Great, thank you. The next one I'm going to put out to Kartik, just because I know you had mentioned nonviolent crisis intervention. So we do have someone who's wondering where you can go to sign up for training for nonviolent crisis intervention, applied suicide intervention, skills training, mental health, first aid. And then a second part of that question is, what advice might you have for an international student as they move forward with a career in psychology?
So I did attach links in the description. There's crisis prevention. You can get NVCI training from there or from NSCC. They also provide training, but also look at the SMUSA website or SMUSA page. They, every year, again, I got those trainings through SMUSA. They posted like first aid training, mental health first aid as well. And for advice for international students is enjoy yourself. I know it can be culturally different. Just explore yourself and explore different, make friends and explore your opportunities at the same time. Let's say when you graduate with a psychology degree, having a job, for example, mental health worker, residential counselor will help you with your permanent residence. Because in my head, I was going for AIPP, which is Atlantic Pilot Program. But later I realized that my 1 year working as a residential counselor do count towards my permanent residence. So again, these are some things you should like little plan ahead. And again, most importantly, just enjoy your time and explore. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I do have another question for Amanda. How did you choose your grad school program? I've heard that not all masters in counseling let you register as a psychologist, nor do they open up the door to a PhD in counseling. Do you have any advice in that respect?
I chose St. Paul because the program actually resonated with me. It marries counseling and spirituality, and that was a really important component for me. So that's why I chose it. There are so many counseling programs across the country, and they do offer different things in terms of MA. If, for instance, at Ottawa University here, they have an MED program, which gives you an MED in counseling. So you could get a Master's of Education in Counseling degree. There are specific counseling psychology degrees, which I know are available in Toronto. York U is a very popular one. So it really depends on what you're looking for. Many of them will offer a PhD program. So the university I attended does have a PhD in counseling. So it really depends on what you're looking for, and if you do want to do research in counseling toward a PhD, what your areas of interest are.
Great, thank you. This next question I'm going to put out to Dane, just because I know you're going through this process. Will your master's degree choice, clinical, forensic, IO, whatever area you're going into your graduate program, matter with your future work, or is any master's degree weigh in the same for your job?
For me, I don't think it matters as much, because I think like the route that I want to take, I guess I've gone the social work route already, so it was easier for me to go into a master's of social work or to attempt to do a master's of social work because I already have that background. But I could have chosen a master's of education and counseling, or a master's of arts, or different things to kind of move up in the company that I work for, in different roles. I guess the big difference between the two is you have to look at what you want to do with it. So for me, I do want to provide more psychotherapy, more counseling types of things, and with a master's in social work, it's such a broad field of practice that you kind of can dip your foot in different spots. Others, it may be more specific. So like a master's of education and counseling, it would be more specific to that counseling piece, which I do like and I want to do, but I may end up getting a job where counsel may be a portion of the job, where I also have to do a lot of like in the community type of hands-on stuff, assessments, or working with folks to and from, where they would look at that social work piece for me. So I chose that route just to keep my options open. But at the same time, I think all of the master's programs are going to give you that level up to do a lot more of the work that maybe a lot of people get into university to do. I think that a lot of the things with the bachelor's level is more entry stuff and frontline, and it's amazing and it's beneficial, and you do learn so much on the job and on the fly within all of these positions that folks have been talking about. So it's beneficial, but I guess to do that next level step, and to be quite frank, to get paid, moving up is always a lovely thing to do.
Wonderful. This next one I'm going to put out to any panelist who wants to answer it, but what are the best opportunities for someone with a psychology background in education? Would it be teaching or counseling, supporting students with determination? So I think it's how do you know what's going to be best for you? How do you know if your passion is going to translate into teaching or counseling or supporting different groups? So if anyone wants to take a lead on that one.
I guess getting to know yourself. Taking that time and dipping your foot in, just trying different things out. Honestly, that's how you're going to figure it out. Like I started out with an undergrad. I knew I wanted to do counseling someday. I didn't know what route I wanted to take, and it's just been in the last year that I'm certain of what demographic I want to work with and how I want to get there. So it's not necessarily something you're going to know starting undergrad or even when you leave your undergrad. So good question. Try things out, volunteer, ask questions, reach out to different organizations in the area to which you want to live and work. There are lots of people that would be happy to talk with someone interested in their field.
Great, thank you, Elise. This next question I'm going to put to Kartik. The question is, how does one get in contact with you to liaise about permanent residency? But I think it's how do you go about getting a job and applying for permanent residency at the same time? So when you would have been graduating university, what did that process look like for you when it came to looking for a job?
So when I graduated, there was a program going on called Atlantic Pilot Program, but not a lot of psychology related jobs or companies are registered under that program. But I continued working with Metro Community Housing Association as a residential counselor, or even if you work as a mental health support or rehabilitation worker, these all will come under category B, NOC. So that will definitely help you to get that experience. And when you apply, because in order to get your permanent residency, you do need to have a full-time job as well as experience, which you will get once you, like, let's say, get a job. And after that, you apply and you still have that job. So that will definitely help you with your permanent residency. But again, like Nova Scotia Health Authority is registered under AITP. You can apply there as a clerk position or unit 8. That will also help with your permanent residence. So with psychology degree, you are not just bound to do only psychological work. You can also do admin work as well.
Great, thank you, Kartik. The next question I'm going to put out to Isaac. What type of qualification would you need to work as a respite worker part-time?
So that is interesting. So what I do is not explicitly respite. I actually, in my past job, I did work with an individual who managed the respite program at Autism Nova Scotia. And to my understanding, there are explicit qualifications for that. I'm not terribly sure about what those are, unfortunately, so I can't fully speak to that. But broad community outreach work, having some sort of background in social sciences or kind of humanitarian, so psychology for sure, but even sociology, things like that, just showing you have that experience working with people, those capabilities and willingness to work with people and improve them in their lives, mental health, things like that. I'm sure that any kind of qualifications or education that would allow you to do that would be great.
Great, thank you, Isaac. And Laura, that may be something that Career Services can help students with as well, right? If you're looking to go under respite?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Excellent. We are getting down to the end. We only have 2 questions left. Amanda, the next one is for you. What advice can you give to an aspiring psychotherapist? I graduate in May and I'm interested in getting into this field.
Advice. Oh my. Oh, let's see. That's a great question. So if you're just getting into the field and depending on what you need for registration, I think one thing that I found really important was having a really good supervisor. So someone who will act as a mentor, someone who will help help you with those tricky cases that come along, someone who will support you in every way possible. You know, just in terms of building up your confidence as you enter the field. As a new therapist, trying to maintain confidence is difficult. There will be clients who come across your, you know, in your office, and you may be thinking, I have absolutely no clue what to do. And so it's really knowing yourself, it's really being kind to yourself, and it is surrounding yourself with the support, whether it is with a supervisor, whether it's with a peer group, whether it's your classmates, colleagues, work colleagues, but having that support system as a beginning psychotherapist, I think, is really, really important.
Great, thank you. This next question I'm actually going to put out to Laura, because I think this is something that Career Services can help with, which is, how can you use your psychology degree in Canada to build awareness and mental health to the forefront to regions of the world where there's less focus, like countries in Asia? The reason I'm putting that out to you is because I think it might be beneficial to know the kind of work that Career Services can do to help students narrow down what their interests are and how that can relate to the work that they want to do.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, if somebody were to come in and see me and ask me that question, I would probably want to get to know them a little bit more and do a little bit of the career counseling piece and self-reflection and figure out what it is that you want to do, because the psychology is just so broad. But if you want to do more of the advocacy piece and like spread awareness around mental health in abroad or wherever, if you want to go back to your home country, for example, I do hear that a lot, like people wanting to open up a nonprofit or become therapists outside of Canada. Yeah, I think there's no one right way of doing it. I think honestly, getting your feet wet, getting as much volunteer experience or paid experience while you're a student, even if being part of a society would be beneficial. And just kind of acquiring all those transferable skills and then going from there. But I'd be more than happy to do a one-on-one career counseling session with you about that.
Wonderful, thank you. And our final question, this one's going to go to Dane. For someone who wants to work in counseling, specifically for youth mental health, what type of qualifications would you need to get started after graduating from a BSc or a BA?
Yeah, so I think that that again depends on you and what type of how you see yourself practicing and the type of work that you want to do. They're all kind of similar, but they all have different ways of kind of viewing how to work with people. So again, I did psychology because I definitely knew that I wanted to get into working with people. But then as I learned more about psychology, and I do love psychology, I found that I was gearing more towards looking at situations from more the social aspects of someone's life. So I went social work for that. For some folks, it's like, you know what, I do understand a lot more of the science or the diagnosis pieces, or like recognizing, you know, some of the things that are going on maybe in the brain and things of that nature. That would be more of a psychology route, and maybe you go into, you know, a master's in psychology or different things related to that. Also figuring out, and again, it's not like a thing that you have to figure out right away, but like getting experience with clientele in terms of like who you want to work with. So again, there's so many groups of people, and we're fortunate to have that diversity and that type of leverage to be able to do that. So again, do you want to work with young people? Do you want to work with old people? Do you want to work with everybody? Figuring out what that looks like can set you up for making decisions. I chose the social work field because of the fact that it's so broad and there's not really a lot of clarity, but also because of that, you can that gray piece can kind of let you go into so many wear different hats in different places, and getting that experience in different entry-level jobs to kind of see what it looks like in different fields will kind of set you up for success in that.
Wonderful, thank you so much. We did just wrap up our questions. I do want to leave you with one thought on my end, just because I do see a lot of you in my office or now here in my virtual office. And when I give you advice and tell you things like maybe go talk to your instructors, if you're thinking of an honors program, try to narrow down which area of psychology that you're interested in. You can see from the panelists that we've had today that knowing yourself, knowing your own interests, knowing what it is that drives you is really important. I'm not telling you to go and talk to your different faculty members because I don't want you to talk to me. I always want to talk to you, but there is a lot of work and a lot of information that you can get out of your faculty, and about knowing yourself in your own area of interest and your own passions. And if you're not sure what those are, that's okay. Especially if you're first year or second year, you're still exploring. And if you're not sure what job that you want, that's okay too. Laura can help. These types of events can help. And I think a lot of our panelists would tell you today that sometimes you're just going to fall into something that perhaps you didn't necessarily intend to fall into. And that can sometimes change the trajectory of what you thought you might have been doing psychology for. Yeah. So at that, I'm going to turn it back over to Laura.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to do a little plug just that ties in nicely to the services that are offered to you as a student. I'm just going to do a little share screen here. So with career services here, we offer confidential career counseling, and there's 3 career counselors at St. Mary's. We're all trained counselors. We all have a master's in counseling psychology, so we're quite like, I guess, aware about what programs do exist in terms of graduate school in Canada, and we do have a lot of resources to help you explore those options. We do assessments as well, personality assessment, interest assessment, so there's a lot of room to explore. It's a non-judgmental space for you to basically do some self-reflective work and help you kind of identify what your goals are and find an action plan. So confidential career counseling. You also have resume and job search support with coaches, and there's the CCR if you want to learn more about volunteer work. There's co-op, service learning, and there's a summer job fair coming up on February 24th, and you can register for that on Career 360. All appointments are booked on Career 360. So that is my little plug. Thank you everybody so much for attending, and the panelists for being generous with telling all your stories. Very appreciated, very informative, and that is it. So thank you very much. That's a wrap.
I do just want to say real quickly,
Yeah.
I think Laura will provide maybe some of like email addresses of the panelists, and I know myself included if anyone has any questions. I love meeting with people to discuss these things. If you have any questions broadly about anything asked today or forensic psychology, I would love to talk to you. So feel free to send me an email with questions, and yeah, just letting that out as a plug.
Yes, I'm just putting my email here for anybody who wants to email me, and then I can direct them to the person that they want to talk to. So all the panelists here are open to connecting with students who want to do an information interview or talk a little bit more. So thank you very much, everybody, and take care. Be well.
Take care. Thank you.